And here we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having a discussion about what is going on in the world as it is today, taking a look at some clips from the news and having a little bit of dialogue. Of course, you can find the live portion on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Coffee Talk and on Prepper University, and that is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon, as we get ready to dive into the world of the ridiculous, taking a look at the media and what is going on in our world. And I am joined today by two felines, one you can see and one you can't. That's a little girl sitting in the chair behind me or sleeping in the chair behind me. And in the corner here on top of the printer, you can barely see her. There is Granny Smith. Granny Smith, for those of you who can see. And for those of you who cannot see, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable in the live portion so that you can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and say hello to some of the people that have chimed in so far today. I see Duck Galt is here, reminding people about thumbs up. Please do if you're on the YouTube, if you don't mind. Puck is here. Helter is here. Holly, Kimberly, Dragon, New York, Cyberjack Sr., Fluke Man, and Brian. Puck reminding us to remember the fall on June 6th, 1944. Yes, indeed. But you know, you're covered for that. You're covered for that. You know why? Well, who knows why we're covered for that? Who knows why we're covered for that? Because dear old, sweet old, lovable old, reliable old, sharp as a pin, Uncle Joe is boots on the ground in Normandy. That's right, boots on the ground in Normandy, ready to represent. Ready to represent. So he's got your back. He's got your back, Puck. I see that Spectre, Monkey, and Chillin' Dave have joined us. Glad you could make it today. That's right, boots on the ground. Biden lands in France for D-Day anniversary and a democracy speech. He's going to campaign. And this is a Reuters article. Naturally. He actually landed yesterday, I believe, correct? It says President Joe Biden landed in France on Wednesday. There you go, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day on a trip designed to underscore his commitment to U.S. allies in Europe and contrast his vision of democracy with his 2024 political opponent, Donald Trump. I hope he doesn't do that. I know he will. I know he's going to use every possible talking point to either put down Donald Trump or to talk about spreading democracy or to try to blow up what a great guy he is and talk about relatives that he never met that did things that never happened. But that's really in bad taste. It's really in bad taste. I know they don't teach history anymore, but a lot of people died during the D-Day operation. A lot of people died on both sides. German soldiers defending a front under orders that in a war they didn't even understand, probably most of them. And American and British soldiers hitting the by the. And this is not a place or time for political rhetoric, but that's what we're going to get. That's what we're going to get. And I'm just waiting for it. You think the Time magazine interview was embarrassing? I'm just waiting to see what he says at this speech. At the very least, it'll be inappropriate. Goes on to say Biden will spend 5 days in France and attend D-Day celebrations in Normandy, where U.S. and Allied forces stormed French beach that helped defeat Nazi Germany in World War II, as well as deliver a high-profile formal style visit with President Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron is a nut, by the way. While in Normandy, Biden will sit down for talks with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. I bet he will. What coincidence. Oh, Voldemort happens to be there. About the war effort to repel Russian invaders, White House National Secretary Sullivan told reporters aboard aboard presidential flight to Paris. Yes. Of course he's going to meet Zelensky. That's the real reason he's there. Between Zelensky and campaigning and talking about how great he is as a president and how he did that. I did that. That was me. I did that. No president's done what I've done. You show me, and I'll take you. I'll step outside, take you. And people are picking on him now. Yeah, Chillin' Dave says that Joe remembers. You know who else remembers? Pepperidge Farms. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Who remembers those commercials? Let's go back. And Chillin' wants to know if Biden's kids also died in Normandy. Yeah, they died in Normandy. They stormed the castle walls with Gandhi. Spectre said, not my monkey. Doc says he's trying to compare D-Day to the war in Ukraine. I bet you he will. And Brian says, imagine Biden leading the D-Day operation soldiers, or better yet, don't. Yeah. And you could go on and on and on with this. I see Raccoons joined us. Glad you could make it today. Dragon says he bets he'll say he remembers storming the beach on D-Day. Yeah, in his space shuttle. He landed there with Christopher Columbus right after the Berlin Wall fell with the help of 007. Helter says this will be the last big D-Day celebration with living veterans, which makes the anniversary even more important. Good point. Good point. And Ghost Wolf Primal has joined us from Texas. From Texas. But yeah, he's down there. Joe Biden is in France, and he's going to talk about D-Day, and he's going to talk about democracy. And I'm just waiting for it. Chillin' Dave says Easter Bunny too. You know what it makes me think of actually is Scrooged, the Christmas parody of Christmas Carol starring Bill Murray from the 80s, when on that network, because he was a network executive, on the network they had a film with Lee Majors where him and Santa Claus are fighting Russians, and they've got M16s. Yeah, that's how I imagine his description of the D-Day invasion. Only he's there too. Him and his grandfather fighting cannibals, Nazi cannibals at the Normandy invasion. Spectre said, you know, monkeys, they poo themselves and start flinging it everywhere, just a matter of time. I don't think he's going to throw any of it. He expects to be lovingly cleaned up. Wouldn't you want your grandparents to be cleaned up if they made a mess of themselves? Oh my goodness. You could go on and on and on, but I'm just waiting for it. I know he's going to say or do something embarrassing. I can feel it in my bones. It's kind of hard not to imagine that, given how often he has flubs on camera, says things that are inappropriate or that don't make sense, or mixes up facts, or makes up a story about something that doesn't make any sense, or he's lying. Like how he used to attend Catholic churches, Jewish synagogues, and Black Baptist churches when he was a kid. All three of them at the same time. I don't know how he managed that. He must have ran back and forth. Maybe they were across the street from each other, and he just went from one service to the other because he's so holy. Stuff like that doesn't make any damn sense. Stuff like that doesn't make any damn sense. But it'll happen. It'll happen. I mean, people are already picking apart Time Magazine, the Time Magazine interview, so much that Time Magazine has had to put out a fact-checking article to explain where he made mistakes or misspoke. Chillin says it's hard to talk for 20 minutes with no 11-year-old's hair to smell. Oh, no. Chillin, how shame on you. And Mars is here. Thanks for joining us today. Glad you could make it. The more the merrier. But yeah, I mean, that's enough about that. He's there. He's going to be embarrassing. He's going to use it as a platform for his political agenda because I don't know, maybe French people are also going to vote for him somehow. So he's going to talk about democracy and saving the world and how he's done such a great job as president. And and how no president has done what he's done. That's the one thing he said that is true. No president has done what he has done. Unfortunately, it's mostly bad, if not all of it. But I wanted to jump to Snopes here. And Snopes is fact checking Trump. They're fact checking a claim about Trump. Article reads, or title reads, those comparisons between Trump and Clinton on the hush money payments. Okay. The differences between Clinton and Donald Trump, because as you are aware, Trump is not the only one that has had to do a non-disclosure agreement with a woman. Bill Clinton did it, and it cost him a hell of a lot more than it did Donald Trump. About $700,000 more. So here we go. According to Snopes, the claim is U.S. President Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000 in hush money. And according to Snopes, this is false. False. But you got to see why they say this is false. And then we'll talk about it. It says on May 30th, 2024, criminal trial against former U.S. President Donald Trump over his hush money payments. And the media loves calling it hush money payments. It's a non-disclosure agreement. Nowhere in, I seriously doubt anywhere in that contract it says hush money. Okay. To adult film star Stormy Daniels ended when the jury found Trump guilty on 34 felony counts, blah, blah, blah. For some social media users, the trial reminded them of an event from the 90s, sexual misconduct scandals surrounding President Bill Clinton. One of the most prominent figures in the scandal was a woman named Paula Jones. You remember her? In 1998, Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000 in order to settle a publicly disclosed lawsuit. Some people have attempted to draw a comparison between Clinton and Jones' negotiated settlement with hush money payments made by Trump. Now, this is where Snopes is going to get really technical to separate the two on paper, as it were. Okay? While the two events might initially appear similar, two former presidents paying money to women with whom they had sexual relations, because Paula Jones and Bill Clinton did have an affair. Okay. It's important to acknowledge the full context. All right. So what is the context? The largest and most important difference is that Clinton and Jones mutually reached an out-of-court settlement stipulating that Jones would receive $850,000. Trump privately arranged his payments in order to keep Daniels from speaking publicly in the first place. So they're saying, Snopes is saying, it's not the same thing because Trump's attorneys intercepted Daniels before they got to court, and Clinton settled with Paula Jones after she already started legal proceedings. That's the technicality that's causing them to claim that it's not the same thing. So technically, if you want to be really technical, it's not the same because Trump's lawyers were faster than Clinton's and paid her off before they got to court or before she went public and made a mess of it. And Clinton's attorneys weren't that swift. And she was in court and stirring up mess before they had a chance. And so he had to settle out. And it cost him a lot more than what Donald Trump had to pay. However, both of these were to cover up an affair. Both of these things were done to cover up an affair and try to get it out of the public eye. Didn't work very well. Oh, man. And Raccoon says Clintons don't pay hush money. They kill whoever they want to keep quiet. Whoa. And Mars says off topic, but they were watching Chicago news, and it consisted of married couple being attacked by a mob of teenagers in downtown and an elderly woman stabbed while walking her dog. Doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. That's the sad reality of how much the culture and society in Chicago and in other major cities around the country have deteriorated. Yeah, Doc Galt impersonating Clinton here. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And by sexual relations, he means intercourse of the strictest form, textbook intercourse, nothing sideways. Nothing sideways. Fluke Man says, you think Joe's old enough to know anyone constantly repeats themselves? I've done this and done that. Nobody has done what I've done or full of shit. Yeah, I know. Nobody trusts that. Nobody trusts that when people brag about things that they've done. Well, I'll tell you, I used to do this and that. That sounds like the kind of crap that we all used to do when we were teenagers or adolescents. You know, when you're like 12 years old in junior high school and you brag about something or you embellish something until it's exaggerated all out of proportion. And everybody knows you're full of shit and they act like they don't know that. And then they make up a bigger story. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. And Chillin says, serious amount of lies the past few years everywhere. So Bill is pro-Cuban, I guess. But that's what Snopes trying to separate the two by claiming that because there was already a lawsuit when Bill paid that woman off, as opposed to Trump getting ahead of the lawsuit or Trump's attorneys getting ahead of it. So Trump's attorneys were just smarter, I guess. Although Paula Jones got a much bigger check. Did she keep the check, though? She talked about the non-disclosure after the fact. That's the thing. That's the problem. Did she get to keep the check? Because, you know, you violate the non-disclosure agreement after you've settled, then it can be reversed and you'd have to owe that money back. I don't know because I didn't follow it that closely. But that's Snopes trying to cover, trying to separate the two, trying to make it look like Clinton is better than Trump. I never heard about anybody dying because of Trump. I'll just say it. And Urban is here. Urban Angst, he says, made it to a live stream. Glad you're here today. Thanks for joining us. And someone had mentioned Chicago. We're going to go to Chicago here really quickly because there was something I was going to mention there because you know the DNC's coming up. And according to the Associated Press and other agencies, the Chicago police ain't fooling around with protesters this time. They've had it. They're going to go full 1960s Vietnam War protesting, the whole world is watching methods this time around. Chicago police tweak mass arrests policy ahead of Democratic National Convention. Again, Associated Press article. Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling on Tuesday touted the nation's second largest police department and still can't manage crime. Just saying. As fully prepared to handle crowds of protesters expected during the Democratic National Convention, including new ways to handle mass arrests. That's right. And you know, the first thing I think of is Soylent Green with the dump trucks. Who knows Soylent Green? I'm sure most of you have seen that film. And the riot control came out, and it was dump trucks, and they were literally scooping people. Law enforcement agencies have been planning for more than a year for the August convention that is expected to draw an estimated 50,000 visitors and massive protests. When you have a party, in this case the Democratic Party, that you anticipate is going to draw that much trouble, you might want to consider if you're in the right party. Just saying. Quote, "Make no mistake, we are ready," Snelling said during a news conference alongside U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Sheedle. Secret Service Director Kimberly Sheedle. Chicago police have received fresh de-escalation training. Oh, please. Yeah, that's useful. While about 3,000 officers are undergoing specialized training to respond directly to civil unrest and the possibility of riots. Proposed changes to the way police deal with mass arrests, which are still being finalized, include more supervisor review on site and debriefings afterwards to see what worked and what didn't. Mass arrests is a last resort, Snelling said, but we know the realities of these types of situations, especially when the number of people we're expecting to converge upon Chicago is inevitable, that there is a possibility for vandalism. There is a possibility for violence, and we are prepared to deal with that. Are you? Are you actually going to arrest anyone? Are you actually going to detain anyone? Actually, the way the Chicago police operate is almost Orwellian. You know, they have a separate detention center because attorneys in Chicago have been fighting it for years. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is Chicago I'm talking about, right? A detention center that's separate from the police headquarters where they bring people first and then bring them to the police department. And it keeps attorneys from having access to their clients right away. So back to the article, more than 50 organizations plan to protest in Chicago, which has denied permits for demonstrations near the United Center convention site. That has sparked lawsuits and groups vowing to march whether or not they have permits. The department has been in the spotlight for its handling of large-scale events. There you are. Can't wait to see how that all jumps off. That ought to be interesting. That ought to be interesting. And D'Lo is here. Thanks for joining us as I catch up a handful of these comments. Morris says their colleagues were talking about this. He said it was full of crap, especially about the hush money. He said from now on, whenever I take a major dump, I'll call it a Stormy Daniels. Oh, my God. Oh, my gosh. Puck says, of course, Law and Order will return to Chicago just long enough for the convention, though. Yep. Kimberly says they remember watching Soylent Green when they were maybe 10. It's worth a rewatch. And Puck says brown shirts. That's racism. Yep. Spectre says after the judgment on T, you notes all the riots and mass damage that happened. Neither did I. And Doc wants to know, where were these cops in the summer of love? Home. Helter says the city will be paying out millions in lawsuits for violating protesters' First Amendment rights for the upteenth time. And you know what sucks about that, actually, is that when the city, state, county, federal government, whoever gets sued, and there's a payout, that's just tax money. It doesn't hurt them at all. It's always tax money. You're going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it. It doesn't really hurt. It might be embarrassing to the local government, but it doesn't really technically cost them anything because they're just going to take that money from the tax coffers. And that's unfortunate. Oh, Turk has joined us today. And Monkey says, crazy how anyone or anything important comes to their city. Everything is all cleaned up and looks good. Just taking advice from CCP lover Newsom. Oh, they'll make it look nice and polished for the convention, and then they'll let it go to shit again. They'll let it fall right back apart. Yes, they will. But yeah, they're just letting you know in advance. They are fully prepared to crack down on protesters. And Mars says it's funny how the news are not mentioning the criminal's ethnicity. We'll see how that turns out. We will see how that turns out. But yeah, they are ready to crack down on rioters. They're ready for mass arrests. That's why I allude to the protests during the Vietnam War, when they used to say, or they chanted during the DNC, the whole world is watching, as thousands of people were relentlessly beaten by riot police and dragged away over a course of 2 or 3 days, while there were international film crews present. And that's why they were chanting, the whole world is watching. And the whole world was watching. And you know what? Didn't help or change a thing. It does not help or change a thing. Nothing. Made no difference. Made no difference. And one more here, and we'll get to the next topic. Something I think is interesting. Another one of my pet peeves. Monkey says, but yeah, it's crazy. They have the capability to do that when it comes to very important things like showing up. It's like cleaning up your place for someone to show up only to let it go to crap again after they leave. Exactly. Exactly. And that's what they do. And they've done that before. There was a lot of complaints about that in Los Angeles because who was it? The Chinese president came to Los Angeles, and they spit and polished it for a week. And that life has joined us. Glad you could make it today. And Turk reminds us the whole world was watching from a safe distance. Exactly. And Urban says people were watching as they received their clot shots, and they still didn't speak up even while it was literally being done to them. No, they did not. They thought they were going to do what Gandhi did, but guess what? Didn't work. Didn't work. Now, for all of those guys out there who think they're not going to lose their job to a robot, okay? Not going to lose their job to a robot. I'm going to take you to a website real quick. This is not a news article. This is a website. Agility Robotics, okay? That is not CGI. This is Agility Robotics website. And those robots are in an Amazon warehouse. Okay? You see them walking along there? They look stupid. They're about the size of a small man. They're about like 5'8" in height, I think, something like that. They weigh about the same as a person. And they are slow. But there go the rest of your warehouse jobs. I mean, all of the new Amazon factories are mostly robotic now. They have robot forklifts. They have robot sorters. Was it San Francisco, Monkey? I might have meant San Francisco. I might have misspoke there. I know he came to California. And Urban says IKEA warehouses have been fully automated for years now. But yeah, this is Agility Robotics. If you want to buy stock, Agility Robotics is the way to go. And Spectre says he'd like to see them build a walk-in shower or trim out a house. Give it a few years. Give it a few years, Spectre, because I've already shown on this channel, it was some months ago, robots that can do drywall, robots that can paint, do interior and exterior painting with precision accuracy. It's coming. Give it some time. And I know that's just a loop because, like I said, this is their webpage, humanoid robots. That's a sped up right there. It says dependable labor is what they're going for. Our products connect isolated manual and automated processes, providing scalable and reliable labor that's ready to walk into your facility and get to work today. Today. not wasting any time. Automation Solutions. That's the robot. It looks pretty goofy. It's got a weird, almost sort of an insect-like design. Here's the robot next to an actual person in the corner here, so you can see a height comparison. They said it's about the same height and weight as a person, plugs itself in and changes itself out with another unit to take over the job. And, you know, they speed it up for this track, but up here you see the actual speed of these machines. And slow as they are, most companies would see these as a viable alternative, and I'll tell you why. Let me read a couple comments here. Kimberly says they can see Walmart and Sam's Club doing this for Instacart and Club Pickup. Yeah, they could do that. These machines are designed for that sort of a thing. Eventually, yeah, you could see Walmart and Sam's Club using these instead of the people they got running around doing the orders now. It'd just be a little slower, but that's okay. Dragon says they saw a documentary about it once. It was called The Matrix. Basically. But the reason is straight up. And why they're replacing not just in the warehouses, because Spectre makes a point here. He says, take all the jobs, there will be no one to buy anything. Then there'll be no reason anymore for the robots. But from their perspective, okay, they're slower and they're expensive to buy. They're expensive to buy and they're expensive to maintenance if something goes wrong. Cheap to operate. They're cheap to operate. But aside from just losing salary, okay, because employees are always the bottom line, but for more than just the pay rate is just the tip of the iceberg. Whatever someone gets paid per hour, warehouse job, $16 an hour, $18 an hour to work in Amazon warehouse or Target warehouse or wherever, right? That's just the tip of the iceberg. You don't have to pay the wage anymore. You don't have to pay insurance. You don't have to pay for training. You don't have to deal with liability in case someone has an accident. Okay? And that's just the sunshine aspect of it. That's just the bright side. You don't have to pay for vacations or sick pay or anything like that. But, and I see Sean has joined us. Thanks for making it today, Sean. That's just the sunshine and roses aspect. The dark side of dealing with employees. And having been a manager, having been a director, you know, I was a manager of a Family Dollar. I was a director of a daycare. I was a director of a facility for juvenile justice, so on and so forth. You know, I've had managerial jobs. Okay. There's people who quit and never come back. There's people who come in late, who leave early, who call in sick and they're not even sick, who lie, cheat, and steal, who sabotage equipment or sabotage other employees, which costs the companies a hell of a lot more than just the salary. Speaking from experience, it's very difficult to find an employee who's honest and reliable, who isn't stealing something, who isn't half-assing his job, who isn't bickering with another employee or bickering with a customer or causing some other problem, who isn't sabotaging equipment or destroying things on purpose because they're upset about something. You don't have to deal with all that if you got a bunch of robots. People have no work ethic. and it's gotten worse over the years. People have far less work ethic now than they did when I was young. I see more of a problem with people not doing the jobs now than when I was younger and working. They're more unreliable now. People are more unreliable. Urban says automation's cost effective until the very first hacking incident. Yeah. And Puck says the dollar will collapse, World War III will kick off before the robots take over. Well, the robots will do the fighting. And Urban says full automation's not exactly worked out for jumbo airliners. Pilots have been warning for years. And Mars says, for the record, I don't trust these robots. I've seen the Terminator and Skynet. You want to not trust robots? Watch the film Colossus. Colossus is what the film Colossus is what the concept of Skynet is based on. I think it's from what, 1972? Colossus. Great film. Great film. Brian says that their co-worker sabotage and gossip about him. Absolutely. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And just one example popped into my head here. When I used to work for Frito-Lay and I was a skilled processor, I worked in the kitchen. I was like basically a kitchen foreman. That's a decent middle-class job. And we had guys there like that. There was a guy that worked on third shift. And before his shift ended, he would make subtle changes to his oven temperatures before he left while the line was running. You know, it's baking the chips. You got the corn coming through, you've got the chips going through the oven, and then it goes through the seasoner, and then it goes up to a sifting unit before it goes up front to the PMO to get bagged for making, you know, Doritos, whatever. And he would make subtle changes to the oven. And then, you know, 15 minutes after you started your shift, you got shit coming out of the oven. It's a mess. He used to do it on purpose because you could open up the stats and you could see where changes were made. It kept a record of all that. It kept a record of all that kind of stuff. Urban says Colossus is an amazing film. Yeah, I recommend it. If anybody here has not seen Colossus, check it out. Was it 1970? I thought it was 72. It might be 1970. And another time, there was a guy who sabotaged the corn spill because the corn is all in giant hoppers boiling so that it can go through and be made into maza, which is corn dough, and it's flattened into sheets and it's cut into shapes to make chips out of. Well, there's a valve that if left open, when you transfer from one hopper to the next, it'll spill out of that valve way onto the floor instead of going into the maza feed like it's supposed to. And somebody overnight didn't like the guy who was coming on, so he snuck and he kicked that valve open on his way out. 2 feet of corn on the floor. It took 5 of us like 2.5 hours to shovel it up. Bastard. But people are like that. So yeah, from a company's perspective, robots don't make mistakes. They don't cheat. They don't lie. They don't steal. When I worked for Walmart, employee theft was the number one problem. Number one problem, employee theft. I don't know how it is now because I worked for Walmart back when Flintstone was in charge. But you see my point. Brian says people are evil. Yes, they are. They like to tell you. People like to tell you, motivational speakers, people are inherently good. Isn't that the Christian thing to say? Screw that. People are inherently evil. They're nasty and selfish and rotten and backstabbing. You have to want to be a good person, and you have to work on that and develop that every day until it just becomes natural for you to be an honest or trustworthy person. And then you're transmogrified. And then when you look around at everyone else, you're like, what the hell? Seriously. Raccoon says he read that cheese puffs were discovered by accident when a machine worker misaligned the extruder for cheese crunchies and it let more air in and made a puff. Happy accident. I love cheese puffs. I think that might be correct, but that's essentially what it is. It does come out of an extruder. Cheese puffs, cheese curls, Funyuns are made in an extruder. Funyuns are made in an extruder. And those machines are actually very hot. I'm glad I never worked in extruding when I worked for Frito-Lay. It is hot as hell around those extruders. And there's it comes out as a tube, like the Funyun is one long hollow tube. And there's a blade that spins super fast and flicks them off into a conveyor bin. It's a shaking bin that vibrates and pushes the Funyuns towards the seasoner. And the blade always pops off. It flies off somewhere, and then the tube just shoots out like someone's squeezing a tube of toothpaste really fast. The whole room fills up with this tube, and then they're out there. They've got these a pole with a big like what 18-inch square metal thing on the end of it, like a flat piece that the maintenance department makes. And they get out there and they're just going like this, just smashing it, flattening it down into powder because it'll break down into powder, and then sweeping it up and putting it in bins, big Gaylord bins, plastic ones. And that used to happen like every day, every day. And I'm like, oh, I'm grateful I don't work in extruding. I never took the courses for extruding. I took the courses for skilled processing because I started off working actually in box drop until they replaced all the box droppers with robots, actually. Oh my God. Let me, Chillin says being scum is easier. Yes, it is. When you're talking about people being an asshole, it's easier. It's much easier. You have to work. You have to want it, and you have to work at being a good person until it becomes second nature, and then it's easy. And then you're just like, this is how I am, and that's how it is. And people hate you for it. They don't like you telling the truth. They don't like you being nice. They don't trust you. And Tuck says, every time I go to Walmart store, employees follow me around like I'm a serial shoplifter, but it's their employees who are the thieves. When I worked there, again, I don't know how it is now, but when I worked there, employee theft was the #1 problem. They spent more time, D100 or Department 100, spent more time. The Department 100 is usually in a big box store. It's losses because they called it D100 in Family Dollar too. It's the losses department, either from shrinkage, from damage, or from theft. But employees stealing was the #1 problem. #1 problem. And Ghost Wolf says Christians don't think people are inherently good. They believe people are born into sin. You must accept Christ and live by example in Jesus. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge, valuable topic of discussion right there, is just how nasty people are. The problem with that, Ghost Wolf, though, is they believe that you're born into sin, but then they think they're hidden by the blood of Jesus so that God doesn't see their sin. And that every time they do something, it's, oops, my bad, Christ got my back, and that they don't have to change. Many of them, not all. I'm not going to say everybody. Not all Christians are like that, but many of them are, and it's a problem. To be repentant, there has to be positive change. If you are someone who shoplifts all the time and you repent and you say, I want to live a holy, righteous life, I'm not going to steal anymore, and then next week you're back stealing, and then you say, oh, my bad, Jesus, I want to live a holy, righteous life, I apologize, and then a week after that you steal again, then you're not repentant. You're just calling on Jesus and thinking you are. And it doesn't work that way. You've got to have a repentant heart. You've got to make a solid effort to not repeat the mistakes or not to repeat the sin. Eric Peter says he agrees 100%. People are more often evil than kind. whenever you mention that people think you're just being a negative person, look at the world which people refuse to do. And Flukeman invokes Westworld with Yul Brynner. Westworld is where when they did Terminator, they took Yul Brynner from Westworld and they took Colossus from the movie Colossus and created Terminator and Skynet from those two concepts. So yeah, Westworld's worth a look. Not part 2 and not the TV pilot, because there is a Westworld 2 and there's a TV pilot called Future World, and they're total shit. But the first film is brilliant. The first film is brilliant. And Eric Peter said, not sure if you remember Bradley's, but I knew somebody who worked in the security office who worked with customers to steal product. Wow. I do remember Bradley's. I worked for Bradley's at the Watertown Arsenal Mall in the early 90s. Bradley's, for those of you who don't know, was a department store similar to Kmart, primarily on the East Coast, and I think they had like 133, 135 stores, something like that. I worked for them 100,000 years ago, or something like it, But yes, of course, and yeah, it figures because with the loss prevention guy or the D100 shrinkage guy is supposed to work with the guy in the cage in the back when they have damaged goods or stuff that's being disposed of. The guy from D100 and the guy who does the accounting for losses or for returns, because very often if you return something, it doesn't go back on the shelf. It gets written off and thrown in the dumpster, right? So, and it's kept in a big cage, and he keeps a catalog in there in the back room. And he unlocks the cage, and he and the guy who's the head of the D100 for the security walks the stuff around to the dumpster, and they put it in the dumpster, and they run the crusher, because everything in the dumpster gets crushed. And so I would imagine that very likely they had some arrangement whereby some of that stuff was going out the side door instead of going in the dumpster, because most of it was in good condition. And Doc says 100,000 years ago, you probably worked with Joe Biden. Yeah, he helped me invent the wheel. And Ghost Wolf Primal says agreed. Thank you. You don't have to agree with me, but it's nice. Uh-oh, Raccoon, before I get to the article here. Raccoon says they worked at Bradley's in the 90s, and their security guy was awesome. He saw him tackle a man who punched a lady for a holiday Barbie. He was always watching the floor. Can't do that anymore. But speaking of theft, you'll love this. Center Square. This is a local California article. Hundreds of Los Angeles fire hydrants have been stolen. Beautiful. You'll love this. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department is investigating the theft of 99 fire hydrants since just the start of the year. A troubling development as fire season approaches. Fire hydrant thefts join a spate of street lamp pole thefts in Pasadena and the rise of electric vehicle charging thefts nationwide as infrastructure theft for scrap metal becomes a serious problem for billions of dollars in taxpayer investments. In 2014, California voters passed Proposition 14, which allows theft under $950 to be charged as a misdemeanor, with a limited amount of prosecutorial resources. Prosecuting thefts under $950 in resale value is a lesser priority than violent crime. Leaders point to a combination of police shortages and lack of criminal prosecution as enabling infrastructure theft that could put public safety at risk. Quote, these fire hydrant thefts are yet another sign of how crime is out of control in Los Angeles County, said former Assistant U.S. Attorney General Nathan Hochman, who is running against Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon, to the Center Square. Thieves know they'll face little or no consequences if they're caught, so they're willing to risk the public's safety for a small profit. And they're not kidding. You ever take anything to a scrapyard? They pay next to nothing. You got a couple of 100 pounds worth of scrap, probably going to get like $13 for it. Former Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva suggested a shortage of law enforcement personnel is also contributing to the theft. This is no surprise to me. When you have more crooks and less cops, you've got more competition. It actually says crops there. They misspelled it. Spell check missed that. Villanueva said to the Center Square, "It used to be wire stripping, then it was statue stealing, and now it's fire hydrants. It's a natural consequence of the defund the police movement." As of December 2023, LASD was short approximately 2,800 employees, including 1,200 sworn deputies. Wow. So the police department is short 2,800 workers. According to this, also, it goes on to say 302 hydrants have been stolen in the south side of Los Angeles County between January 2023 and last month. And, again, part of this falls onto the scrap yards because, if I work in a scrap yard and you bring me a fire hydrant, I'm not taking that shit. Who's taking this stuff? I'm not taking that. That's like going to a pawn shop and they know they're taking stolen goods. That pawn shop is also liable. The scrap yards should be held liable as well. If these scrap yards weren't taking this stuff, if you bring me 100 miles of stripped copper cable that looks like it came out of lamp posts, I don't want that. And if they stopped taking it, if someone was policing that, people would lose the incentive to steal it. Stuff that's real obvious, like a fire hydrant. It's not like someone's going to melt the hydrant down into ingots and bring it in for scrap. That hydrant, again, it's probably not worth $12 for scrap purposes. Unbelievable. Chillin' Dave says, obscure reference, the movie The Town, when the cop sitting in his cruiser looks away. And Urban Angst says they take it all to the Pulp Fiction scrapyard. That must be. And Puck says the people that defunded the police are citing a police officer shortage. I wonder if they'll connect the dots. Time will tell. Time will tell. Oh my God. And Helter says there's an old saying, steal everything that isn't bolted down, but I guess that doesn't apply any longer. Yeah, I know, because it's not easy to get one of those off. You need to have the right kind of equipment. And they're heavy. They're heavy. 2-3 guys isn't pulling one of those up and just running away with it. Okay? Really. And Monkey says the less than $900 bill is very demoralizing in terms of following the law. If you can get away with stealing less than $900, what's stopping you from stealing when you don't get punished? Absolutely. Absolutely. And Urban says, don't forget the evil plastic straws. Yeah, they want you to drink through a paper straw so that it can get soggy and fall apart in 30 seconds. And then poison you. Because of the chemicals that are used to make cardboard, you're not supposed to ingest. It can make you sick. And speaking of which, we may as well just shift gears into Oakland, since we're in California anyway. Shift gears into Oakland, if I can get this to open right. Hold on. Because, Restream gets weird. Restream gets weird. It's been fine to me. It's been fine with me so far. Fortunately, because remember a few months back, I was having a lot of trouble with Restream. It's gotten a little better. Here we go. And this is going to be a New York Post article. Oakland streets have been left unpaved for weeks after the construction crews flee with safety concerns. Oh no. Mars says they probably thought the fire hydrants were made out of real gold. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, the fire hydrant in the picture was painted with a gold color, which is why he made the reference. But yeah, they probably thought it was real gold. Hey, there you go. They followed the rainbow. That's where they landed, only they didn't realize it was the wrong rainbow. So on to the article here really quickly. East Oakland, California neighborhoods been left with unpaved streets for weeks after construction crews refused to finish the job over safety concerns, according to reports. Residents of Colorado's Drive, is that right? Colorado's Drive in the Sobrant Park neighborhood have been forced to navigate bumpy streets and debris-filled potholes since city construction crews tore up the road in preparation for repaving, but never came back to finish the job. They put the signs up and did some work, resident Shari Anagaro told Kron 4 KRON, explaining they were first told work would commence in March and that it would be done by mid-May. Weeks later in June, the roads remain a wreck, leading Angranaro to complain to officials with the California city. I called, and the engineer with the city of Oakland said that the contractor pulled out because the crews didn't feel safe. The ground is uneven and a lot of gravel is used to fill potholes, and it's getting kicked up, she says. Sobrante Park has long had a reputation of one of Oakland's most dangerous neighborhoods, an issue that was largely seeded by systemic discriminatory policies that cut it off from the rest of the city in the mid-20th century. It would go on to become a hotbed of drug and gang activity from there, and today remains the site of numerous shootings. Oakland as a whole has seen an uptick in crime, with burglary up 40%, robbery up 31%, and vehicular robbery up 51%, according to Oakland police. The city of Oakland has acknowledged that the construction crews have indeed abandoned the paving job. Here's my point about this. They want to quote, okay, systemic discriminatory policies. You know what they're suggesting here, that it's racism, okay? That's what it is. And there you go. Urban Angst says, whatever you do, do not blame the oppressed criminals. No kidding. All right. And Dragon says, the sad part about it is all these people complaining don't realize it's their kids that are the ones committing the crimes. All right. This reminds me, and I've got to look up the documentary again so that I can cite it correctly, because I've quoted this documentary before and I can't remember where it was. And it's about an infamous housing project that was demolished. And in this documentary, and like I said, I've mentioned this before, my wife and I watched it together, and you had these people sitting there, these former residents. Oh, no one would come. They wouldn't clean up the trash. They wouldn't replace the light bulbs. The police wouldn't come when you called them. The fire department wouldn't come. The phone company wouldn't come. You know, whatever. They discriminated against us. The city wouldn't help us. The police wouldn't help us. Blah, blah, blah. Right? 10, 15 minutes later into the same documentary, the same people laughing and bragging about how anytime anyone did come, they attacked them. Oh, yeah, we saw a police car. We saw a fire truck. We saw the gas company van outside. We'd throw trash and rocks and bricks out of the windows. We throw Molotov cocktails on those MNFers. Excuse me, weren't you just a few minutes ago crying about how they wouldn't help you? You drove them off. You made it unsafe for them to come and help you. This neighborhood is complaining that the road crews left because they don't feel safe. What have you done to make them feel unsafe? Can you blame them for leaving? You'll certainly complain about it. Doc Galt says Cabrini Green. That might be it. I think you might have hit it, Doc. I always forget. When we watched the documentary on it, and that one contrast always really struck me about the documentary, that they sat there and they complained about being abandoned by the city, by the county, but they drove them off. The phone company came. They were throwing bricks out of the windows at the phone company truck. They attacked these people and ran them off. And then when they would come, you know, why would they keep coming back? Sit there and rot. Screw you. I'm not sending another fire truck up to that project because you attack the trucks every time. Brian says generational curse. Exactly. And Puck says that sounds like Hurricane Katrina victims until they ran out of food. And then one more here. Urban says city workers and emergency crews have been staying out of Islamic neighborhoods all across Europe, especially in places like Sweden, all because of racism, of course. Yeah, that ain't the reason why, but you know what I mean. They run them off, and then when they refuse to come, they sit there and they act like, oh, we're being oppressed. Oh, they won't help us. Oh, feel sorry for me. Feel sorry for me. No, I refuse. But with that, we are at the top of the hour. I've still got 2 sleeping cats in the room. Miss Granny Smith behind me, and then out in the chair here, for those of you who can see, little girl who has slept the entire time. So again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion if you wanted to join it on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on both the Coffee Talk and the Prepper University channel. Please do join me there. Please give it a thumbs up. Look at some of the other videos. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, and that is at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com. And again, I will say thank you to everybody who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will see you